Hi guys, welcome back to Learning with JD. And be prepared for a long session today. Yes, because we are going to talk about the project schedule knowledge area. So, guys, from last few of the sessions that we've already been doing for our examination preparation, we've started covering the knowledge areas, and we in today's session we are going to talk about the project schedule management. So it's a very important and a very lengthy knowledge area. You have to understand this thoroughly from your examination perspective. So let's see what are we going to cover today. So we are going to see how do we plan the schedule, how do we define and sequence the activities, how do we estimate those activity duration, and how do we define the scope and how do we control that. So these are the top 6 things that we are going to cover today. Plan, define and sequence activities, estimate activity for that particular duration, and define the scope and control the scope. Alright, so the key concept of project scheduling. Project scheduling provides a detailed plan that represents how and when the project will deliver the product. So you need to understand what is it important for your project. Of course, the scope is important for your project. Of course, the cost is also important. But another important aspect is also time, schedule. You cannot be running a project at an end number of time, right? You do not have an end date and you're just starting a project. Does that ever happen? No. You always have to know that what is going to be the end date of your project. So project scheduling provides a detailed plan that represents how and when the project will deliver the product, service and the result as defined in the project scope. It serves as a tool for communication, managing stakeholders' expectation and as a basis for performance reporting. So it not only covers the detailed plan as when will the product or the service or the result will be delivered, but it also provides as a tool for communication, managing stakeholder expectation. So the stakeholders should know when the project will be over as a basis for performance reporting, and it also reports the performance of the project. For smaller projects, defining activity, sequencing activity, estimating activity and developing the project schedule, that is the scheduling model, are tightly linked. It is a possibility that all these 4 activities are done together. Whereas for a large project, it may be a separate, different processes. However, for smaller projects, it can be a single process. The detailed project schedule should remain flexible throughout the project to adjust for knowledge gained. So throughout the project, you will keep on earning something, you will keep on learning something, you'll increase understanding of the risk and value added activities. So there are a lot of things that will keep on adding, keep on changing throughout the project. So the detailed scope should always remain flexible throughout the project. Some of the emerging practices for project scheduling are iterative schedule with a backlog. Now, these are all trending and emerging practices which have been adopted in the PMBOK 6th edition. This is a form of rolling wave planning based on adaptive life cycles, such as an agile approach for product development. This means what? That at the time of the activities which are at a near future will be scheduled at the beginning, and the projects which are at a far future will be just kept at a high level. Maybe not a detailed scheduling of those activities will not be done. On demand scheduling. This approach typically uses in a Kanban system is based on a theory of constraints and pull up schedule concepts from lean manufacturing to limit a team's work in progress in order to balance demand against the team's delivery output, which means that on the basis of a activity, the scheduling of that particular activity will be done. Let's see what are the tailoring consideration. Why do you need tailoring consideration? Yes, because each project is unique. Some of the tailoring considerations are life cycle approach, resource availability, project dimensions and technology support. You can read in detail about this in the PMBOK 6th edition. Now, what are the considerations for agile adaptive environment? Why do you think that an agile environment or an adaptive environment is becoming important day by day? Adaptive approaches uses short cycles to undertake work. It takes work for a very short time and then completes that, delivers that. It also reviews the results, adapt as necessary. In large organizations, there may be a mix of small and large projects. Now, there can be a possibility that there are long-term roadmaps to manage the development of these programs using scale factors. The role of the project manager does not change based on managing the projects using a predictive development lifecycle or managing projects in adaptive environment. It doesn't change. Now let's see what are the important processes under project schedule management. So we have 6 different processes: plan, schedule management, define, sequence activity, estimate activity duration. So you have to define the duration at an activity level. You develop a schedule and you control a schedule. Let's start with the first one, which is plan, schedule management. So what is plan, schedule management? So plan, schedule management, as we've seen in the previous sessions as well, planning is all about how you're going to manage your schedule, how you're going to estimate the activities, how you're going to define the activities, how are you going to sequence them. That is all a part of plan, schedule management. It defines you how. So plan, schedule management is the process of establishing the policies, procedures and documentation for planning, developing, managing, executing and controlling the project schedule. The key benefit of this process is that it provides guidance and direction on how the project schedule will be managed throughout the project. Now let's see what are the inputs that we need for creating a schedule management plan. We need the project charter. Why? The project charter has summary of the milestone schedules that will influence the management of the project schedule. Now for every project in the project charter, there will be certain high level schedules that will be mentioned. And where will it be there? Obviously in the project charter. Then we need the project management plan. The components of the project management plan that we may need while creating a schedule management plan is the scope management plan and development approach. We also need our EEFs and OPAs. We've spoken about enterprise environmental factor and organization process assets in greater detail in some of the previous videos. You can please go back and check on those. So EEFs are organizational culture, infrastructure, personal administration, the marketplace conditions, how the industry is shaping up, what is the enterprise doing, all that are the factors that influence the project. And OPAs are something which is internal to an organization. It is all about policies, procedures, formats, processes. So as a project manager, you also need to know what are the OPAs. Now let's see what are the tools and techniques needed for creating a schedule management plan. Expert judgment. Experts get job everywhere. Experts should be considered from individual or groups with specialized knowledge or training in previous or similar projects. They can come and help you create and build a schedule. Data analysis. A data analysis technique that can be used for this process includes alternative analysis. Alternative analysis can include determining which schedule methodology to use or how to combine various methods on the project. So these are some of the data analysis techniques that can be used, that is alternative analysis. Meetings. Project teams may hold planning meetings to develop the schedule management plan. Participants at these meetings may include the project manager, the project sponsor, selected project team members, selected stakeholders. Obviously, you will know what are the stakeholders, who are the stakeholders, what are their level of influence on your project. Anyone with the responsibility for planning, for schedule planning or execution, and others as needed. And so these are all the entities that you would want to call for a meeting to close on the schedule management plan. Now let's see what are the outputs of the plan schedule management. Obviously, we get the schedule management plan. The schedule management plan is a component of the project management plan. So all the subsidiary management plans and the baselines are a part of the project management plan. So it is a component of the project management plan that establishes the criteria and the activity for developing, monitoring and controlling the schedule. The schedule management plan can establish the following. It creates a model, release and iteration length, level of accuracy, units of measurement, organization process links, and project schedule model maintenance. So these are all the components of the schedule management plan. So we've got the schedule management plan. Now let's see how we're going to define the activities. Define activity is the process of identifying and documenting the specific action to be performed to produce the project deliverable. Now activities are nothing but a breakdown of all the scope that you have collected during the scope management plan. So you remember that we had our entire requirements ready at the time when we did our scope management plan. Now defining an activity is actually breaking down or specifically writing down, documenting all the specific action that you need to perform to produce that particular deliverable that has been finalized in the scope. The key benefit of this process is that it decomposes the work packages. You remember we create work package in the scope. You are further decomposing the work packages into schedule activities that provide a basis for estimation, scheduling, executing, monitoring, and controlling the project work. Now you are further getting that down at a level that you can actually monitor each activity. Let's see what are the inputs that we need. Of course, we need the project management plan because everything is written in the project management plan as to how we will do it. So what is, because we are doing schedule, so schedule management plan and the scope baseline. So you remember we created scope baseline. Your scope baseline is an output of, create WBS. So you need to have your schedule management plan and you also need to have your scope baseline. You will also need your EEFs because you want to know what is happening around the industry, and you need all the formats, the historical information, the lessons learned of your previous projects. Hence you need the OPS as well. The tools and techniques that can be used for defining an activity are expert judgment. Expert can be considered as an individual or groups with specialized knowledge of similar past project and of the work performed or of the work being performed. Now decomposition. This can be a 1-mark question for you. The decomposition tool and technique is used in which process? What is the feature of the same? So decomposition is a technique used for dividing and subdividing the project scope and project deliverable into smaller, more manageable parts. Activities present the effort needed to complete a work package. The defined activity process defines the final output as activities rather than deliverables, as done in the create WBS process. Now at the time of create WBS process, you have all your activities at a work package level. You further break it down using decomposition as a tool and technique. It is a technique of dividing and subdividing the project scope and deliverable into smaller, more manageable parts, right? Rolling wave planning. Rolling wave planning is an iterative plan technique in which the work to be accomplished in the near term is planned in detail, while the work further in the future is planned at a high level, which means that at the level which is project is at a, when the project is going on and the first activity that needs to be done, you will break it down further at an activity level. But the ones which needs to be done at a later stage, you will keep it at a work package level itself. It is a form of progressive elaboration application to work packages, planning packages and release planning when using an agile or waterfall approach. Meetings. Meetings is also a tool and technique, important one. Meetings can be face-to-face, virtual, formal or informal. Meetings can be held with team members or SMEs to define the activities needed to complete the work. Now let's see what are the outputs. You get the activity list ready. The activity list includes the schedule activity required on the project. For projects that use rolling wave planning or agile technologies, the activity list will be updated periodically as the project progresses. The activity list includes an activity identifier because it has to go back as to which work package has released this activity, and the scope of the work description for each activity in sufficient detail to ensure that the project team members understand what work is required to be completed. Then there are activity attributes. This is closely related to activity list. Activity attributes extend the description of the activity by identifying multiple components associated with each activity. The component for each activity evolve over time. Activity attribute are used for schedule development and for selecting, ordering, and sorting the planned schedule activity in various ways within reports. Then you also get milestone list. A milestone is significant point or event in a project. A milestone list identifies all project milestones and identifies whether the milestone is mandatory, such as those required by contract, or optional, such as those based on historical information. Milestones have zero duration because they represent a significant point or event. Always remember, milestone will never have any duration. It is always an event in your project. Remember this, it can be a 1 mark question for you. Change request. Once the project has been baselined, the progressive elaboration of deliverables into the activities may reveal work that was not initially part of the project baseline. Can be a possibility that when you get into a detailed understanding and creating activities, there will be certain work that will come up which was not a part of the baseline. This may result in the change request. Change requests are processed for review and disposition through the Perform Integrated Change Control, that is PICC process. Your project management plan also gets updated. The components that may require a change can be your schedule baseline, your cost baseline can get updated. So you remember your scope baseline was an input, update to a schedule baseline, and a cost baseline is an output. Alright, now let's see that you have defined your activities. Activities are nothing but a further smaller components than the work packages. Now there are n number of activities. You may have thousands of activities. How do you know that which activity you need to do first, and how do you know which activity needs to be done after that? We are now going to see the sequencing activity. So sequencing activity is the process of identifying and documenting relationship among the activities. The key benefit of this process is that it defines the logical sequence of work to obtain the greatest efficiency given all project constraints. It does take into consideration all the project constraints. This process is performed throughout the project. What are the inputs? You need the project management plan, of course. The schedule management plan and the scope baseline are the two important inputs here. The schedule management plan defines the method used and the level of accuracy along with other criteria required to sequence the activities. The scope baseline. The project WBS, deliverables, constraints, and assumptions documented in the scope baseline are considered explicitly while sequencing the activities. Then you also need the project documents. There are a lot of documents that you've created in the previous process group. During defined activity, you created your activity list, your attributes, assumption logs are available, the milestone list. Of course, you need the EFs and the OPAs, what's happening around the enterprise, what's happening within the organization, the policies and the procedures. Now let's see what are the tools and techniques that you need for sequencing your activity. PDM. Now you will be getting certain questions around this and you have to make sure that you're very thorough about it. The precedence diagramming method, that is PDM, is a technique used for constructing a schedule model in which activities are presented by nodes and are graphically linked by one or more logical relationships to show the sequence in which the activities are to be performed. We will show you an example of the PDM as well. Now there are 4 kinds of dependencies in a PDM and there are logical relationships. You have to thoroughly understand this slide because there will be n number of questions that you may get, approximately 2 to 3 questions which can be direct and which can be scenario based as well. So the first one is the finish to start, that is F2S. A logical relationship in which the successor activity cannot start until a preceding activity has finished. So for example, there are 2 activities, activity A and activity B. So activity A has to first finish. So the first word, that is finish, is for the first activity, and the second word start is always for the second activity. You always have to keep that in mind. That is the ground rule. So the first activity has to first finish for the second activity to start, which means that till the time the foundation is not laid, the construction of the building cannot start. So that is activity A and activity B. The second logical relationship is finish to finish. A logical relationship in which the successor activity cannot finish until the preceding activity has finished, which means two activities have to finish together. Now A is already in progress and you start B, but A cannot finish till B also doesn't finish. For example, you're creating, you're building two walls, two parallel walls, right? Both the wall have to finish at the same time. That is a logical relationship. Start to start. A logical relationship in which the successor activity cannot start until the preceding activity has started, which means activity B cannot start till A has also not started. So B doesn't have any impact on A getting finished, but it has to ensure that A has started. For example, a writing of a document is an activity A and editing of a document is activity B. So B cannot start till A is not started. So A will start and you will not wait for the entire document to get over and then will be sent for editing. You may start the activity A, which is writing of the document, and when the section of the documents gets completed, you may send for editing. So it doesn't have any dependency on the closure, on the finishing of it, but it will has an impact on the start of it. Then the most complicated one is the fourth one, which is start to finish. Now we have hardly seen any examples of this in the real life scenario. Start to finish is that activity A cannot start till activity B is not finished. Now this is a very different and it's an upside down type of a scenario where first activity has an impact on the second activity getting closed. We have generally seen this in R&D and research and form filling type of scenarios. Very difficult to find in a normal construction or in technology scenario. So these are the four logical relationships. Keep this in mind. You will definitely get around 2 or 3 questions around this. So these are the representation of the activities, activity A and activity B. A to B in S to S, that is start to start. Again A to B in finish to finish. And then A to B in start to finish. Alright, let's move on to the next tool and technique. Dependency determination and integration. Dependencies may be characterized by the following attributes. There are 4 types of dependencies: mandatory, discretionary, internal or external. Let's see what is a mandatory dependency. Mandatory dependency are those that are legally or contractually required to inherent in the nature of the work. It is important and you have to take that into consideration. It's like a feature of the product. Then there is discretionary dependency. Discretionary dependency are sometimes referred to as preferred logic or preferential logic or soft logic. Now it depends upon the project manager to decide whether discretionary dependency is to be taken into consideration or not. Then there is external dependencies. External dependencies involve a relationship between project activities and non-project activities. These dependencies are usually outside of the project team's control. Internal dependency involve a precedence relationship between a project activity and are generally inside the project team's control. Let's see what are leads and lags. A lead is the amount of the time a successor activity can be advanced with respect to a preceding activity. Lead is often represented as a negative value for lag in scheduling software. So what is lead? Lead is a time that the next activity, what is the time that a next activity can start before? For example, it can be plus 10 days, plus 15 days. When a successor activity does not have a dependency on the finishing of the first activity, you can add lead to it. You have an option of creating a scenario where the successor activity is done much before than what it was scheduled. So that is what is known as lead. Now you may add new resources to it. You may get something from, you may hire a machinery. That is all a part of lead. Then lag is the amount of the time a successor activity will be delayed with respect to preceding activity. Now for example, the cementing of the building is done, but you need to water the building, which means that no resources will be used at that point of time. No construction resource will be used at that point of time. So that is a lag time. It's a wait time. No work is happening. You put the water and you just let it be there, right? It is going to be there for some time. So that is a lag time where the successor activity, which is the next activity, will be delayed with respect to the preceding activity. Now this is an example of a lead and a lag. Got that? Alright. Let's see one of the examples of how do we manage the entire flow of it and how does it actually work. Yeah. Alright. So if you see that you start your work from here, okay, this is the work that you are actually starting now. You begin, and then there are three activities that work on parallel: A, H and K. Now what do you mean by all these three activities? All these three activities are working currently in parallel. Okay. Now let's see what is the kind of relationship which happens on these particular activities and how does it come to an end. Now assuming that there is nothing written, if you see there is something mentioned here, that is SS, SS plus T, SF plus 15, which means that there is a particular logical relationship there. If nothing is mentioned on any of the arrow, it means that it is the first logical relationship which is finished to start. So you have started your activity A. Now what is the dependency of activity B? Activity B can start only when activity A gets completed. So you will complete activity A and then you will start activity B. Let's also see in parallel what happens to activity F. Activity F will also start when activity H will get over. When it is over, activity F will start. And what happens to activity L? Activity L will also start when K is over. Are you okay till here? Have you understood till here? Then we will move on. Yeah? Now let's go on some of the other activities. Now what is the status of activity C? Can you see activity C here? What is the status of activity C? When can activity C start? So it has two relationships. It has a relationship with B, which is SS. So it will start when B starts. But it also has a relationship on H, which means that when H will get over, only then activity C will start, right? So which means that there are two dependencies to activity C. One is H has to get over and B has to begin, which means there can be a possibility there is a wait time there. Yeah. Alright. Now let's see what happens to I. What is the dependency on activity I? I is going to start 10 days after H has started. Can you see this relationship here? This activity I will start 10 days after H has started, and it also will start when K has finished. It also has a dependency on K. So when K is over and H has started plus 10 days, only then I will start. Now what happens to activity D? What happens to activity D? How are you going to work on activity D? Activity D will start only when C has finished. C will finish and then activity D will start. What happens to G? Any idea? G will start after 15 days of F finishing. Can you see this relationship of F and S? Fs plus 15, which is finish. F is the first word which is for the first activity. S is the second word which is for the second activity. So when first F is finished, only then G will start 15 days after F is finished. Got that? Now what happens to J? This is a complicated one. What do you think happens to J? Can you see this? J will start when I is over, when I will get finished, but it has to finish with L. Remember this F and F, finish to finish? It has two dependencies. I will finish and J will start, but J will finish with L. So that is the kind of complexities. Yeah, these are the relationships. In your examination perspective, you may get certain questions here saying that what is the impact on J, and there will be options, right? So you need to keep all these options in your mind. Now let's see what happens to E. What is the impact on E? What happens to E? E will start when B is over and D is over. Understood? E will start when B and D both are over. When will the project be complete done? It will be done, it will end when your E, G and J will be closed. All these 4 activities will be closed, only then that particular small project will be closed. This is how you sequence your activities. Got that? I hope it is clear, guys. Can we move on? Alright, now let's see what is the another tool and technique. Project Management Information System, that is PMIS. Project Management Information System includes scheduling softwares that has the capability to plan, organize and adjust the schedule of the activities, insert logical relationship, leads and lags value and differentiate the different types of dependencies. Now let's see what are the outputs. What do we get? Project Schedule Network Diagram. A project schedule network diagram is a graphical representation of the logical relationship, also referred to as dependencies among the project schedule activities. It can include full project details or have one or more summary activities. A summary narrative can accompany the diagram and describe the basic approach used to sequence the activity. That's a project schedule network diagram, what we actually saw now. Your project documents may get updated. Your attributes, list, assumption logs, milestone list, all these will get updated. Now let's move on to the next process under the project schedule management. Now we are going to estimate our activity duration. We defined our activities, we sequenced our activities. Now we are going to estimate as to how much time will each activity take. Understand, everything right now is going to happen at an activity level. So estimate activity duration is the process of estimating the number of work periods needed to complete an individual activity with estimated resources. You have to make sure that depending upon the resource, you define your duration. Why? Because an experienced resource can do the same activity at a lesser time, whereas a resource who is a fresher resource may take a little more longer time for that. The key benefit of this process is that it provides the amount of time each activity will take to complete. What are the inputs? You need the project management plan. We've spoken about this before as well. The schedule management plan, the scope management plan, all these are the components of the project management plan that you need while estimating your activities. You need your inputs, you need your project documents. Now there's a long list of project documents that you've already created till now. You want to refer all of them while you're creating the duration. The most important ones are going to be what are the activities that you've already created. So the list and the attributes and the assumption logs. Then your milestone also comes along with that. You also want to know what are the lessons learned of the previous projects. You also want to know what is the team assignment to you. You want to know what is the resource breakdown structure, your risk register, your resource requirements. All these are a part of the project documents that you need while creating a duration of every activity. Then you also need to know what is happening within the organization, what's happening outside the organization. You need your OPAs as well. Let's see what are the tools and techniques. Expertise should be considered from individuals or groups. And they should have knowledge or training on specific areas. It can be schedule development, managing and controlling, expertise in estimating, discipline or application knowledge. These are all the expertise which people generally have. You can hire them, they can come across and help you out in activity duration, in creating the duration at an activity level. Then comes your analogous estimating. Analogous estimating is a technique for establishing the duration or cost of an activity or the project using historical data from a similar activity or a project. You may get 1 or 2 mark questions around this. Analogous estimation is one of the fastest mode of estimating a duration, but it is again less accurate. It is also less costly because you are taking some duration estimate from the previous or similar project. When you get a question that you are trying to do estimation of your duration or your cost basis some of the historical data, what type of estimate are you using? It is analogous estimation. Analogous estimation is a technique for establishing the duration or the cost of an activity or a project using historical data from a similar activity or project. Analogous estimation uses parameters from previous similar projects such as duration, budget, weight, size, complexity as the basis for estimation. It is less costly, less time consuming and other than any other technique, but it is also less accurate because you've not done a lot of homework on your project. You're just trying to get some data from the previous projects. Then what is a parametric estimation? Parametric estimation is a technique in which algorithm is used to calculate cost or duration basis on a historical data or project parameters. Now the only difference between analogous and parametric, and you have to keep this in mind from your examination perspective, is that in analogous you use only historical data, but in parametric you use historical as well as some statistical relationship between that historical data versus the other variables. For example, square footage in construction, what is the cost, budget and duration of the previous activities of the previous projects. All that is a part of parametric estimation. Then there is another tool and technique which is known as 3-point estimation. We also call it PERT. Using 3-point estimation, it helps defining an approximate range for an activity. Now it can be a possibility that there are 20 people in the team. You may ask, how long do you think the project will take on 3 bases? Most likely, very optimist view and a pessimist view. The optimist view will be the best case scenario, the pessimist will be the worst case scenario, and most likely will be the median. Depending on the assumption distribution of the value within the range of 3 estimates, the estimated duration, that is TE, can be calculated. One commonly used formula is a triangular distribution. There's a beta distribution as well, which we are going to see in the cost. But here your formula for triangular distribution is as follows. TO is time very optimist, TM is time most likely, and TP is the time pessimist, divided by 3. Triangular distribution is used when there is insufficient historical data or when you're using your own judgmental data. Then there is a tool and technique known as bottoms-up estimation. Bottom-up estimation is a method of establishing project document or cost by aggregating the estimated at a lower level component of a WBS. At a WBS level, you try to find out how long will the project will take, and then you try to consolidate all that, which is nothing but a bottoms-up estimation. When an activity's duration cannot be estimated within a reasonable degree of confidence, the work within the activity is decomposed into more detail. The detailed duration are estimated. Then data analysis, alternative analysis and risk and reserve analysis. Alternative analysis is used to compare various levels of resource capabilities or skills, scheduling, compression technologies or techniques. Reserve analysis is used to determine the amount of contingency and management risk needed for the project. There are 2 types of risk, contingency and management. We are going to see this in detail when we do risk. Decision making. Decision making is also a technique that can be used in this process, included but not limiting to voting. One variation of the voting method that is often used in agile-based project is called the Fist of 5. Meetings. The project team may hold meetings to estimate activity duration. This meeting is usually held on the first day of the iteration and is attended by the product owner, the Scrum team, and the project manager. The outcome of the meeting includes an iteration backlog as well as assumption, constraints, risk, dependencies, decisions, and actions. Now let's see what are the output. What is it that we are going to get when we are estimating our activity duration? Of course, you get the duration estimate. What are duration estimate? These are quantitative assessment of a likely number of time period that an activity will require to complete. For example, an activity will take 2 weeks, 4 weeks. That's an activity duration that you actually get as an output. Duration activity do not include lag. At this point of time, only the activity time is something that is mentioned in the duration estimate. Duration estimate may include some indication of the range of possible result as well. For example, the range of 2 weeks plus or minus 2 days, that you will be able to complete an activity within 14 days plus or minus 2 more days. So that is a general assumption which is written in the duration estimate. Then you also have to define what are the bases of estimation. You cannot just get up and say that this is my estimation, I'm going to take 10 days or 1 year or 10 years. You have to have on what basis are you saying this, right? So the amount and the type of additional details supporting the duration activity vary by application area. Regardless of the level of detail, the supporting documentation should provide a clear and complete understanding of how the duration estimate was derived. Then your project documents also get updated, your attributes, assumption log and lessons learned register gets updated. So yeah. Now let's move on to develop schedule. So you've planned your schedule, you defined your activities, you sequence your activity, you estimate the duration at an activity level. Now you're going to develop your schedule. Develop schedule is the process of analyzing activity sequence, duration, resource requirement and schedule constraint to create a schedule model for project execution and monitoring and controlling. The key benefit of this process is that it generates a schedule model with planned dates for completing project activity. This process is performed throughout the project. What do we need? We need the project management plan, which is schedule management plan and the scope baseline, and all the project documents that we've been working upon. You also need your agreements at this point of time. Vendors may have an input to the project schedule as they develop the detail of how they will perform the project work to meet contractual commitments. So you need to include the agreements as well. All the timelines regarding third-party deliverables will be mentioned in the agreements. You need to know what the EFs are. You also need to know what your OPAs are. The schedule network analysis. Now that's the tool and technique that you will use for developing a schedule. Schedule network analysis is the overarching technique used to generate the project schedule model. It employs several other techniques such as critical path method, resource optimization techniques and modeling techniques. We are going to see all of them today. Now what is a critical path? Now what do you mean by a critical path? A critical path is used to estimate the minimum project duration and determine the amount of schedule flexibility on the logical network path within the schedule model. Understand that when you remember when we were doing the sequencing of the activities, there are n number of paths, right? The path will go on for all the 3 activities which started at one point of time. But the minimum project duration on a particular path is called the critical path. This schedule network analysis techniques calculates the early start, early finish, late start and late finish dates for all the activities. The critical path is a sequence. What do you mean by early start, early finish or late start, late finish? What is the earliest that an activity can start or what is the earliest an activity can finish? And what is the latest late the activity will start and what is the late, this is the outer limit, the activity has to finish. That is what is known as the critical path method. A critical path is the sequence of activities that represent the longest path through a project which determines the shortest possible project duration. The longest path has the least total float. It is usually 0. What is a float? Float is a time duration that you have for managing your leads and lags or any risk that comes up. If there is no float for you, it is a 0 float. It is a critical path for you. On any network path, the total float or schedule flexibility is measured by the amount of time that a schedule activity can be delayed or extended from its early start date without delaying the project finish date or violating a schedule constraint. Critical path is normally characterized by zero total float on the critical path. Alright, so let's now see how do we identify a critical path and how do we work on that. How do you measure on that? Let's take an example and see how we're going to finalize on the critical path and how should we find out what is the float for each of the other path as well. Let's start. Okay, so we know that we will start from our project with the start. Now there is a particular activity A. Now you have to identify that you will see certain boxes here, right? So there's one box here, one here, one here, one here, something here, something here. Okay, what is all this? Now when you see something, what is written in the center is activity name. Now look at this, refer this guys. Here at this point of time, if you can see this corner, this is your activity name, the center thing which is mentioned, that is A. Then you see what is the early start at the left hand side corner, the extreme corner, which is an early start. Now this is an early start which is 1, which is day 1. The earliest an activity can start is day 1, which is activity A can start on day 1. Then your early finish, the earliest your activity can finish, which is on this. Something which is mentioned in the center, I'll come to that what it is. Late start is the latest that an activity can start. Latest. It has to start on that particular day. The latest the activity can start is the late start, which is here. And then the late finish. The latest that an activity can finish is this particular date. Now in scenario A, activity A, you can see all the dates are same. I'll explain you how it happens and how is it different. The center is an activity name that you've understood. This is early start. This is early finish. This is late start and this is late finish. Okay. Now on the top, if you see what is mentioned as 5, this is your duration. How long will an activity take? How long is the work of that particular activity? That is the duration. And here if you see, this is something that you will calculate, which is known as the activity float. If you see, this is your activity float. So there's a zero float here and I'll tell you how the float is calculated. Got that? Is it clear now? Alright, let's start. Alright, so let's start. Now let's start fresh. We are saying that we have early start, we have early end, and now we are going to talk about how do we calculate the float. Now the story begins like this, that there are 4 activities, A, B, C, D. Now will you say activity A takes 5 days, activity B takes 5 days, C takes 10 days and D takes 15 days. Okay, let me show you. I'm sorry if you have not got it. Let me repeat it. Activity A takes 5 days, activity B takes 5 days, which is 10 days, C takes 10 days, which is 20 days, and D takes 15 days, which is 35 days. Do you say that all these activities will take 35 days and hence your project will get finished in 35 days? No, because here we can see that activity B and C can work in parallel. They are actually working in parallel, right? Now we are going to see how does that work and how will you calculate your critical path. How will you ever know what your critical path is? So when you start the project, your activity A starts on a particular day. You take that day as 1. You are on day 1 right now with your first activity, which is an early start. Now activity A is going to take 5 days, right? So which means that activity A will get over at the end of day 5. Which is at the end of day 5 is what your activity A will get over. Now this is an early start. Earliest is activity will start on day 1. Earliest it will finish at the end of day 5. Now that is the activity of activity A. Now moving on to B and C. We say that B and C can both work on parallel. Now when can B start? Because it is not mentioned anything. It directly means that it is a finish to start relationship. Which means B will start only when A is over, C will start only when A is over, which means B can earliest start by day 6. Because this A is got over at the end of day 5, so B will start as the day 6 will start, and similarly with C. C will also start when the activity A will get over, which is on day 6. Got that till here? That B and C both are starting on the same day parallel. resources are parallel, workplace is parallel, whatever, right? So it is working on parallel. Now activity B is going to take 5 days and activity C is going to take 10 days. Activity B takes 5 days, so it gets completed on day 10. At the end of day 10, it gets completed, right? Because 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And at the end of day 10, your activity B is over. Your activity C, because it will take 10 days, it will get over at when? Activity C will get over on end of day 15. Why? Because it is going to take 10 days. Now this is the early start and early finish. The earliest the activity can finish is on the 10th day and the earliest the activity can finish is on the 15th day. Can the activity C be finished before 15? No, because it will start on day 16 and the duration is 10 days. Then we will move on to the activity D. Now can the activity D start when B is going to finish? No, it has to wait till C also does not get over. If you see the relationship between B, C and D is that D will start only when B and C is over. It has a direct relationship for finish to start an activity, which means that B will finish early at 10. However, it is going to wait for next 5 more days. It is going to be idle. Those resources will be idle. It cannot work on activity D till C is not over. C is going to get over on the 15th day and hence activity D will start only on the 16th day. Activity D will start only on the 16th day. Got that? Are you clear till here, guys? That everything has a logical relationship to each other. A will start on day 1, has a duration of 5 days, finish on day 5, at the end of the day 5. Activity B and C both can work in parallel. If activity B will start on 6th day, activity C will also start on 6th day. Activity B has duration of 5 days. It will get over on 10. Activity C has a duration of 10 days. It will get over on 15th. What is activity B resource going to do? Nothing. They are going to wait for 5 more days because C is still going on. Why are they going to wait? Because D has a direct dependency on B and C. Only when B and C gets over, D will start and hence D will start on day 16. Now again, D has a activity duration of 15 days, right? So which means that it will get over on activity on day 30th. So if you see that with the help of a network diagram and creating a flow chart and letting things work in parallel, you have saved 5 days. Because ideally speaking, A, B, C and D individually if done and not parallelly would have taken 35 days. But at this point of time, when you are working B and C in parallel, you complete your project in 30 days. That is the earliest that your project will get over. Remember, this is early finish. So which is the early finish is your activity, which is on 30th day your project gets finished. Now, how do you find out? So if you have to find out only the project timeline, this is how you find out your project timeline. The project timeline is 30 days. Now, if you want to find out what is the critical path, you will do a backward pass. What we right now did was a forward pass. You will now do your backward pass. For understanding the backward pass, what you need to do is that you need to first fix one thing, that your project duration is 30 days. It cannot go beyond that, which means that your earliest your project will finish is on day 30th. And the late finish will also be 30. You will not go beyond 30. You will say that I will not go beyond 30. I have to finish my project on 30. And for that, I need to understand which are the activities which are critical for me and I have to pay more attention on that. So when you come back, what you try to do is that you take 30 as late finish and again minus it with the duration which you already have for activity D. Your duration for activity D is 15 days. So when you minus 15, you again get your late start, which is 16. You cannot start the project after 16. You have to start your early start as well as your late start is 16. Can you start the project which is late start by 17? If you do that, your end of D will become 31. Which means you're violating your timeline. It is going beyond 30 days. What is the float? How do you calculate the float? The float is the difference between early start and late start, or early finish or late finish. In this case, because it is 30, 30 and 16, 16, your total float is 0. Do you have a float here? Do you have time here? You do not have any time. It's a 0 float, which means it's a critical activity for you at this point of time. Then you again do a critical back pass further down to other activities also. If you have to late start this activity on 16, when you have to late finish your activity C, you have to finish on day 15. You don't have any option. Do you think this activity will get finished on 16? Can you finish your 30th timeline? You will not be able to, right? Which means that it has to get finished at least till 15. Now let's see what happens to B. Now do you think that you have to finish this activity till 10 here? Your early finish was 10, but your late finish can go up to 15. Why? You remember you had a 5-day float. Your people are sitting idle. You have 5 more days to get delayed. Your float is 5 days. You have a 5-day float here. Because your 5-day people were sitting idle, which means that when you finish, your early finish is 10. But latest you can finish by 15. You can finish on 11, 12, 13, 14, 15th. Any of these days. It is okay. It is not on a critical activity. Similarly, when you also do a back calculation and you go even further down to see what is the late start, which is what is it that late you can start your activity. When you talk about B, you can latest start your activity on day 11. Why? Because the moment you start your activity on the 10th day, you will finish on 14th day. If you start on 11th day, you will still finish on day 15. You are still within the timeline of this 30 project, finishing the project on 30. Why? Because this is anyways going to get finished on 15th. Till the time this doesn't get completed, you cannot move on to D. Got that? Similarly, when you talk about C, do you have any other option but to latest start even by 6th? You cannot go beyond 6th. You have to start by 6th directly. Then again you do a back calculation and the same logic falls to activity A as well. Because you have a float, you do not have any float in activity C, you do not have any float in activity A as well. Which means there is 0 float here, there is 0 float here, and this is 0 float here. So this activity for you is an critical path. Do you understand, guys? I'm not sorry if you're not able to view this. Okay, let me use a darker shade for you. So this activity is a critical path for you. So to ensure that your project is over within the timeline, you have to make sure that you clearly and closely monitor A, C, D. You understood now why B is not a critical activity? Because it has a duration of 5 days, C has a duration of 10 days, D is dependent on both B and C. Till B doesn't get over, D cannot start. Till C doesn't get over, D cannot start. C is anyways going to take 10 days, right? So B has a float of 5 days here. Got that? Alright, moving on. There's another technique of resource optimization. There are 2 techniques which are used in resource optimization to adjust the start and the finish dates of the activity: resource leveling and resource smoothing. A resource leveling technique is the one which starts and finishes where the start and the finish dates are adjusted based on the resource constraint. That where resource is the most important thing. If you do not have resources, your project timeline will move on. With a goal of balancing the demand for resources with the available supplies. Whatever is the supplies available with you, you are going to adjust your project accordingly. Then there is something which is known as resource smoothing. A technique that adjusts the activity of the schedule model, such as requirement for resources on the project do not exceed certain predefined resource limits. This is the example of resource leveling with the activity before leveling and activity after leveling. So if you see before leveling, at this point of time, activity A and B were supposed to be done in parallel and activity C was supposed to be done after A and B is completed. But here if you see, there is one employee queue who is required in both the activities A and B. So activity A, Sue is going to take 8 hours. Activity B, Sue is also going to take 8 hours. So at this point of time, it is impossible or very difficult for Sue to work on both the activities. So if you do not resource levelize, then the work will get finished in 2 days. If you understand Sue's problem and adjust the work accordingly, your resource leveling is done. So first activity A will be done, and then Tom and Sue both will work for 8 hours. Activity B will be done, which is for 8 hours, and Tom doesn't do anything during activity B. And then activity C will be done, where Tom will work on 8 hours and Sue will not be doing anything. So that is an example of a resource leveling. Then you have data analysis techniques. There's a what if scenario. What if scenario analysis is the process of evaluating scenarios in order to predict their effect, positive or negative, on project objectives. It answers the question, what if situation represented by scenario X happens. Simulation models the combined effect of individual project risk and other sources of uncertainty to evaluate their potential impact on achieving the project objectives. Leads and lags, we've already spoken about leads and lags before, are refinements applied during network analysis to develop a viable schedule by adjusting the start time of the successor activity. Leads are used in limited circumstances to advance a successor activity with respect to the preceder activity, and lags are used in limited situations where processes require a set period of time to elapse between preceder and successor without work or resource getting impacted. Now another tool and technique in which you may get some questions around are crashing and fast tracking. These are all schedule compression techniques. A technique used to shorten the schedule duration for least incremental cost by adding resources. So when you add resources, it is known as crashing. And what is fast tracking? A schedule compression technique in which activities or phases normally done in sequence are performed in parallel or at least a portion of its duration. This is the tool and technique. For normal activities will be done, 5 activities will done, and then 10 and then 15 with one resource each. But when you talk about fast tracking, you will do 1 or 2, 3 resources, then you will do 4 and 5 in parallel. 4 and 5 happens here in parallel, which means you reduce on the number of days, and then again 7-8 day activity is done in parallel. So you reduce your time from 15 days to 11 days. Here the risk is very high. And then when you talk about crashing, you add more resource, you add more people. The activity that is to be done in 5 days, you try to complete in 3 days, and hence again you try to reduce the schedule. But here the cost is very high. Now what is a project management information system? It includes scheduling software that expedites the process of developing a schedule model by generating start and finish dates based on the inputs of the activity, network diagram, resource and activity duration. Then there are agile release planning. Agile release planning provides a high-level summary timeline of the release schedule, typically 3 to 6 months, based on the product roadmap and product vision for the product's evolution. Schedule baseline is an output of developed schedule. 1 mark question for you goes here. A schedule baseline is an approved version of the schedule model that can be changed only through formal change control procedure and is used as the basis for comparison to actual results. It is accepted and proved by the appropriate stakeholder as the schedule baseline with this baseline start date and baseline finish dates. You also get your project schedule. Project schedule is an output of the schedule model that presents linked activity with planned dates, duration, milestone and resources. You can present it in any manner. One manner is a bar charts, also known as Gantt charts. Bar charts represent schedule information where activities are listed on a vertical axis, dates are shown on horizontal axis, and activity duration are shown as horizontal bars placed according to start and finish dates. Milestone charts. These charts are similar to bar charts but only identify the schedule start or completion of major deliverables and key external interfaces. Project schedule network diagrams. These diagrams are commonly presented in the activity on node diagram format, showing activity and relationship without a timescale, sometimes referred to as pure logic diagram. You also get your schedule data. The schedule data for the project schedule model is the collection of information for describing and controlling the schedule. The schedule data includes at a minimum the schedule milestone, schedule activity, activity attributes, and documentation of all the identified assumptions and constraints. Then you also get your project calendar. A project calendar identifies working days and shifts that are available for schedule activities. It distinguishes time period in days or part of days that are available to complete the schedule activity from time period that are not available for work. Then you also get change requests. Modification to the project scope or project schedule may result in change request to the scope baseline or any other component of the project management plan. Change requests are processed for review and disposition through the PICC process. We all know that. Your project management plan gets updated, project documents get updated. Got that? So that is all about the planning process. You plan, then you define activity, sequence activity, and then you estimate the activity duration, and then you develop your schedule. Now let's see how we're going to control the schedule. Control schedule is the monitoring and controlling process. Is the process of monitoring the status of the project to update the project schedule and managing changes to the schedule baseline. The key benefit of this process is that the schedule baseline is maintained throughout the project. Let's see what are the inputs that you need for controlling your schedule. You need the project management plan, all the subsidiary management plan, the schedule baseline, scope baseline, performance measurement baseline, all that is a part of the project management plan. And all the project documents you need are lessons learned, the calendar, the project schedule, resource calendars, resource schedule data. All these are a part of the project documents that you need for controlling your schedule. Work performance data contains data on project status such as which activity have started, their progress, and which activities have finished. Then you need your EEFs and you also need your OPAs. Some data analysis techniques are earned value analysis. Earned value we are going to do in quite detail during our cost session, which is the next session, because there are a lot of calculation within that. So we are going to cover it there. In the PMBOK also it's covered under cost as well. So schedule performance measurements such as schedule variance, that is SV, and schedule performance index, that is SPI, are used to access the magnitude of variation to the original schedule baseline. What is it that was planned? What is it that is actually happened? That is nothing but a variance. The difference between that is something that needs to be monitored. That is something what is known as schedule variance and schedule performance index. Iteration burn down chart. This chart tracks the work that remains to be completed in the iteration backlog. It is used to analyze the variance with respect to an ideal burnout based on the work committed from iteration planning. Performance reviews. Performance review measures, compares and analyzes schedule performance against the scope baseline such as actual start and finish, percentage completed, and remaining duration of the work in progress. That is what is known as performance review. Now, what is trend analysis? Trend analysis examines the project performance over time and determine whether performance is improving or deteriorating. What is variance analysis? Variance analysis looks at the variance in planned versus actual, start and the finish dates, planned versus actual duration, and variance in float. We did float some time back, right? What if scenario analysis? What if scenario analysis is used to access the various scenarios guided by the output of the project risk management process to bring the schedule model into alignment with the project management plan and approved baseline. Then you have critical path method. We did critical path in the previous one also. Comparing the progress along the critical path and can help determine the schedule status. The variance on the critical path will have a direct impact on the project end date. Evaluating the progress of the activities on near critical path can identify schedule risk. PMIS, we've already spoken about PMIS previously. It's a software that helps the ability to track the plan versus the actual dates. Then we've already spoken about resource optimization as well. Resource optimization techniques involve the scheduling of activity and resources required by those activity while taking into consideration both the resource availability and the project timeline. Leads and lags. Adjusting leads and lags is applied during network analysis to find ways to bring project activities that are behind into alignment with the plan. Schedule compression activities also. You will apply them at the time of controlling your schedule. Fast tracking or crashing, both of them. What is the output now? Work performance information. The work performance information includes information on how the work is performing compared to the schedule baseline. Variance in the start and the finish date and the duration can be calculated at the work package level and control account level. For project using earned value analysis, the SV and the SPI are documented for inclusion in work performance reports. You also get your schedule forecast. Your schedule forecasts are forecasts of estimating or predictions of conditions and events in the project's future based on information and knowledge available at the time of the forecast. Forecasts are updated and reissued based on the work performance information provided as the project is executed. Schedule variance analysis as well as reviews of the project progress result of performance measurement and modification of the project scope and project schedule may result in change request to the schedule baseline, scope baseline and other components of the project management plan, and hence the project management plan gets updated. Your project documents get updated. Got that? Let's quickly see what we've done today. So plan schedule management, the process of establishing the policies, procedures and documentation for planning, developing, managing, executing and controlling the project schedule. What is defined activity? The process of identifying and documenting the specific action to be performed to produce the project deliverables. Sequencing activity, the process of identifying and documenting the relationship among the project activities. Estimate activity duration, the process of estimating the number of work periods needed to complete individual activities with the estimated resources. Develop schedule, the process of analyzing activity sequence, duration, resource requirement and schedule constraints to create a project schedule model for project execution and monitoring and controlling. Control schedule, the process of monitoring the status of the project to update the project schedule and manage changes to the schedule baseline. So guys, that is it from my end. I know it was a very lengthy session, but please understand it is a vast chapter as well in PMBOK 6th edition. You have to understand the concept very clearly. Please go back and review the project scope management as well. It's going to help you understanding on the coming up video where we are going to talk about project cost management. Till then, like, share and comment on the video that I have just uploaded. You can subscribe to my channel if you've not done that already. Please do that. Please subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you in the next session. Till then, keep connecting, keep studying and all the best.